Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Sunday School Dropouts podcast. And
Yay!
we are returning with more religious trauma and the holidays Q&A today.
Yes, more Christmas cheer.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We are back with more Christmas cheer. I love it, though. I was just, because I know we were just talking about how, I think it's so helpful. I mean, there is a lot of heaviness with a lot of this stuff, understandably. Right. But it is nice to just be able to talk about these things. I remember when I was still like on my way out of the church and not having platforms like this, not having community like this to, it was very isolating. It felt very lonely. And so, I'm grateful that we have the space to talk about these things.
Yeah, I am too. I think it'll be a really great episode. We have some great questions. We've got a fun little game to play. And then we'll kind of share a couple other memories that we have. But I think, we can just get into it. Andrew, I know that our last episode, we had our Christmas Jeopardy quiz, and I feel like we came out pretty even, on the scores. So we probably need to have another one just to see truly who is the Christmas, I don't know, would it be king or queen or the Santa's little helper? I have no idea. Who's the best Santa's little helper?
So this is the tiebreaker. Basically.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So we've got some great questions. Andrew's got a few for me. I've got a few for him, and we will see who is the best Santa's little helper.
All right. Well, now the pressure's on. I need to make sure I find the hardest questions.
I know. These questions that we're pulling from are much harder, I feel like, than the last quiz we did.
Are you ready for the first one?
I'm ready. All right, let's do this. I should get my Santa hat so I'm like really like in the spirit.
I know. You need to be more dialed in. I feel like there's not
seriously.
Neither one of us really is like dressed in appropriate colors.
Don't worry. I've been listening to Christmas music all weekend just for this, just so that I was really in the spirit and the mood.
It's like, oh my gosh. All right. So here's the first one. In Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, what was Mr. Scrooge's first name?
Ebenezer.
That is correct.
Yes.
I feel like that one wasn't. I mean, I guess if you've never watched or read A Christmas Carol, you might not know that, but I feel like that one wasn't too hard.
But I will say that I just watched the movie Spirited with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, and it's like a modern day twist of Scrooge, except also like kind of a Broadway musical type thing. It was so cute. I loved it. And there was an Ebenezer Scrooge character, which is why I think I know that answer.
I saw the trailer for that just yesterday. Like I need to actually watch that. So
yeah, it's actually pretty good. I liked it. All right. I'll give you an easier one too. So in the song, We Wish You a Merry Christmas, what type of pudding is called for?
Give me a second. Oh, I even know the line. I don't remember.
Now bring us some pudding. Now bring us some pudding. Now bring us some pudding.
Yeah.
Now bring some right here.
Why can't I remember? Without looking it up, I mean, I actually don't know.
I'd have to Google serious?
I'm dead serious.
Okay, it is figgy pudding.
Oh, okay. That's that. Okay, that also makes sense why I wouldn't know that. Because what the hell is figgy pudding?
Wait, you don't have that all the time?
I do not.
Okay, I remember.
No, now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. But yeah.
So when I was in high school, we every other year we did this like Renaissance Christmas like production. It was actually really, really cool. And we sang all these Christmas songs, and it was like, we were dressed up in Renaissance era clothing and all the things. And what the tradition I think actually is that the figgy pudding is actually like in the middle of flaming brandy. So you have like when you like serve it to somebody, it looks like it's almost like a cake or whatever. And in the center of it is this cup of brandy that's on fire. So it's
Dang.
really cool.
That's actually a really cool tradition. I did not know this. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So now I expect you to do that this year.
Oh, that actually sounds fun. I need to go like deep dive this. This is interesting. All right. Okay. Second question. Let's see here. Well, second question for you. Third question overall, I suppose.
Yes.
What Bing Crosby song is the best-selling single ever?
Oh God. Is it "I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas"?
Mm-hmm. It's just called White Christmas, but that is the one. You knew it.
Okay.
I knew you knew what I was referring to. So yes, that is the answer.
Yes, yeah. I love it. I love it. Maybe I'll sing that at the end of this episode. Just kidding. I won't make people do that.
Well, you're on record as saying it now, so folks are going to be disappointed if you don't.
Yeah. Listen to the outtakes of this episode. Yeah. Okay. I've got, all right. So I'm going to go with this one only because of your history background. So that's my little preface, right? Okay. So a celebrated quote unquote Christmas truce temporarily halted fighting during what war?
I actually do know that. World War I?
Yes, you got it. All right.
I do actually know that one. I don't remember exactly what the region was. I just know that it was on the Western Front because it was like, I think the German and British soldiers who did that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And didn't they sing like Silent Night or something like that? Wasn't there like some singing of Stille Nacht?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they did that. I think they even briefly like went across and like were like exchanging food and cigarettes and like, I think even played like at some point played like a football, like soccer, like a soccer game or something.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's stories that happened somewhere on the Western Front, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, there you go. History degree, coming into play, and we are good.
I got a little bit of redemption on that one, although I had no idea about the Figgy Pudding. So
exactly.
All right. We're getting back in this.
All right.
All right.
All right. Hit me with it.
The next question is this is a good one, I think. Okay, so Miracle on 34th Street centers on what real life department store?
Oh God. I think it is Macy's.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yes.
It is Macy's.
I can't even tell you the last time I watched that movie, but I guess that only because of like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, and isn't that on 34th Street or something?
I think so. Because it goes by the actual store. Yeah,
okay.
Like their big flagship store, whatever they call it. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
That's the only reason I remember it is because of the connection with Macy's Day the Thanksgiving Day parade. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I admit I'm not a big department store shopper. So if we're anything other than that, I don't know that I would even know. I mean, there's like Saks Fifth Avenue, maybe Nordstrom. I don't even know if that's a department store.
I think so. I don't know.
Like JC Penney's.
I was gonna
Sears.
It's like downtown New York City is like, is this like Kohl's?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what were department stores back then? I don't even know.
Exactly. Kohl's. I think so.
Like it was an Old Navy for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Dollar General. That's probably it.
Yeah, well, if Miracle on 34th Street was filmed in Tennessee, it would indeed be a Dollar General, but
it totally would be. Yeah, there's so many of them here. I love it. All right, here's your final question, and this determines if we are good Santa's helpers. Melikalikimaka means Merry Christmas in what language?
Is Hawaiian?
Yes, that's it.
Is that what it is? It is. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what the song is saying. But.
It sure is. But of course, the only thing I think of with Melikalikimaka is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Because isn't that like
I was gonna
the song in the background with Clark Griswold and the swimsuit or whatever, that we were never allowed to watch that scene.
I had that movie on in the background literally just last night. And so then that is the scene where they play. That's like the only movie I can think of. I mean, I'm sure it's in other things too, but that's what I always associate that song with now.
Yes. I love it. Well, okay. You got 2 for 3. I got 3 for 3. I think we're probably both like really good Santa's helpers.
Yeah. I mean, you did win. I'll give it to you, but we're both good helpers.
I mean, yeah. I think we'll just like put a pin on it. And next year, I mean, we can start prepping all year for next year's Christmas quizzes and, really
maybe
see who can take the honors.
Yeah. Next year, maybe we need to do like buzzers and have like a game show moderator or something. I don't know.
I think so. So Kevin, our editor, just know that this is what's coming for you next year, is that you're going to need to come up with questions and a whole game show behind it. And since I know that Kevin happens to love Alan Cummings on The Traitors as a game show host, Kevin, get your Scottish attire ready, your Scottish Baroque ready, and we will have the Christmas quiz of all, Christmas quiz bowl. That's what we can call it. And we will really just knock it out of the park.
So today, instead of doing prayer requests, we're actually going to share a little bit about holiday traditions, basically. Both what kind of those look like for us currently since deconstructing, but probably a little bit of kind of how things have changed through the years since deconstructing. I think holiday traditions, especially around Christmas, since it is such an important holiday when you grow up in the Christian church. There's a lot of pieces of it that are just like, they're overtly steeped in religion and all of that. And so I think it's good to talk about kind of how we've reclaimed that, or maybe moved on from that. I don't know. I'm curious, Laura, what are some of your current holiday traditions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciate what you said there about just things changing, because, I definitely think that where I'm at now is different than, where I was at 10 years ago or anything like that. So in terms of my own traditions, where I'm at now, I really love Christmas decorations. I don't do like, nativity scenes or anything like that, but I love Christmas trees. I love decorating my house. So I'm one of those weirdos who definitely does it before Thanksgiving. This year, I think it was like the weekend after the elections because it just felt very necessary. And I love Christmas music. I always have. There's something about it that just is very, very nostalgic. And so my favorite thing to do, and I may have mentioned this before, is to like at night, I will turn off all the lights in the house except for the Christmas lights, like on the tree. And then like I've got a banister with garland. And so those are the only lights that are on. So I have that on, and then I turn Christmas music on, and I just listen. And it's so, I don't know, I just love it. And this year in particular, I've been listening a lot to Handel's Messiah. So, which of course is not like pop music or anything. But I know I mentioned my high school. So on the off years that we didn't do this Renaissance dinner festival, we did Handel's Messiah, and we would sing through the entire thing. And it was a huge community thing. It's funny because I was a part of a very tiny town and community, but we had an incredible musical program. And so, so I mean, I think it was 10th grade and 12th grade, I was singing Handel's Messiah. And so for whatever reason this year, I was like, oh, gosh, I would really like to listen to that. And it has been extremely emotional because I think I've realized that how pivotal music was on getting me through some like very overwhelming, distressing situations. And I didn't even realize how pivotal music was, because it really, music with our vagus nerve like helps to keep us regulated and stuff. And I was like, wow, that was this bill. I would sing for an hour, at least an hour every single day. And so there was just something really special, and has been special this year, about sitting in front of my Christmas tree, just with the lights on, listening to Handel's Messiah. It's like I can see my choir director, who is my favorite teacher, waving his wand. And it's just, it's been pretty cool. So that's probably one of my biggest Christmas traditions. I would say the most consistent one that I've had over the years. And I don't know if I have other ones, but maybe I'll think of some. What about you? What do you have for Christmas traditions, Andrew?
Yeah. Um, Definitely. Still like having like a tree up with lights. I like what you said actually, like having just the Christmas lights on and nothing else. Like that's something that I've loved doing that since I was a kid, and I still
Mm,
do. Like that is
hmm
something that is consistent regardless of where I've
hmm
been, like faith wise. Um, and one thing I definitely do, there's like a whole slew of Christmas movies like I'll definitely watch at some point. I like throughout the month of December and leading up to
hmm
Christmas. I don't even know. Like some of them are like ridiculous, but some of them are more like classics. Like everything from like It's a Wonderful Life to like The Polar
hmm
Express, some rendition of A Christmas Carol. There's several different ones out there.
hmm
Um, Elf,
That's the best one.
Elf,
Yeah, yeah.
Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, stuff like
hmm
that. Yeah.
hmm
So yeah, those are some of the things that are
Yeah.
still like things that are still meaningful to me.
hmm
I don't like, back when I was in the church, things like Christmas Eve services were probably a more
Yes.
meaningful thing. That I don't do that anymore,
hmm
just because I don't feel like going into a church. I don't.
hmm
It's funny. I don't even dislike the music just because of the nostalgia, but I'm not going to go to a church to listen to it. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
hmm
So,
Yes, exactly.
yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at these days.
Yeah. I'm a big Christmas movie person also. And I'm the weirdo who loves like all the Hallmark ones, all of the ones on Netflix and Hulu. However, are you a Home Alone person? Like Home Alone 1
Oh,
and 2?
yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So what's your favorite? Home Alone 1 or 2?
Um, Honestly, I'd have to say Home Alone one. I like them both a lot, but Home Alone one, the first one.
Okay. I mean I love the first one. I love the second one. I don't well, I was gonna say I don't know why, but that's not entirely correct. There is a scene in the second one where Marv electrocutes himself, and to this day, I cannot not laugh during that entire scene the exact same way I did when I was a kid. Like I mean, I fell over on the floor laughing when I was a kid. And like that is still what I do. And I think so part of it is that. And inevitably every year, one of my siblings will like video record that scene as they're watching it and send it to the rest of us because we all just have this like humorous, like overly humorous response to it. But both of them are so good. They're just classics.
Yeah, those are. Oh, man, I can't believe I forgot to mention those. Yeah, those are absolutely classics. Those,
Yeah.
those are two that I'll definitely watch at some point.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
more than once before the season's
Exactly.
over. So, hmm
Exactly. So you kind of mentioned this, but I'm curious to know like what have the holidays been like since deconstructing? Like what was that process for you?
it's one of those things where I actually have to say, for me personally, it was not as difficult as it was for some folks because I don't. It's one of those things where growing up, like I mean, my parents were in the church and all that, but even my parents, I think, were kind of like um, annoyed with how, to what extent Christianity, especially fundamentalist Christianity, had sort of like, I don't know, just
Yeah.
they were just annoyed with it. Like, I don't know. It was an interesting relationship that we had to Christmas. So we always did Christmas, but it was almost just more of like about just family togetherness than it was, Jesus is the reason for the season type of stuff. So
Mhm.
me leaving the church didn't really change that much for me, other than just I don't really do stuff in a church anymore. Like I don't go to Christmas
Mhm.
Eve services or whatever, stuff like that. Yeah, actually, and I'll be honest. I don't even mind. I don't like love nativity scene setups, but like there's but like the one that I grew up with that like my mom still has, like I actually like that one, but it's more just
Mhm.
about the nostalgia of it, not because of what it symbolizes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
yeah, so really
Mhm.
for me it wasn't. I don't know that much really changed, other than it just doesn't involve the church anymore. But to be fair, it never really centered around the church to begin with.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I know I mentioned being a very musical person growing
Yeah.
up, and I actually that is the part that I miss the most from church experiences is like being on the worship team, community singing. But all of my siblings are also very very musical, and so and we went to a pretty large church. For the area, we were the by far the biggest church for the area because we didn't live in a huge town. Um, but that meant that we would have like, 5 Christmas services, and it's, it's like the capitalistic Christmas, right? Where it's like you got, what is that video that goes, the drummer boys coming down from the ceiling and, all that stuff. We didn't have that, but it was like, I mean, this was something that, so like all of my siblings and I, everybody wanted the Anderson crew. And so, we would have to, for months beforehand, we're, doing all this music stuff. And of course that's fun. But it was exhausting. I mean, that would be our entire Christmas Eve. And my parents were, happy to accommodate that because of course it's for God and, everything like that. But I mean, that was, it was a lot. And so I feel like in my adult years, Christmas Eve, some of those Christmas traditions really centered around a lot of work, because it, like, Christmas Eve and day was just like, it just was work because of being on the worship team. So I do think that like there was time after that where I kind of did have to take a step back from everything. And so I don't know if it was exactly because of deconstruction or because I was just so exhausted by the amount of unpaid labor I gave to, churches year after year. But then I think slowly it felt important for me to go like, hey, what do I want this to be? Similar to so many other areas of deconstruction, right? Where it's like, I like doing this, but I want to do it in a way that is meaningful to me. And so I agree with you, like the nativity piece, there is something, like I was with some of my nieces and nephews setting up for Christmas, and they were setting up a nativity scene. And I was like, I kind of like, I love this. Like, this is, the nostalgic piece of it. And I was like, maybe I should get one for my house. And I was like, okay, well, no, I'm probably not going to go that far. But I also like the cultural aspect of it is like, that's a part of our cultural heritage, essentially, of like what we grew up with. Like that part to me feels a bit nostalgic. But I know that there haven't always been years like that. And I also know there's a lot of clients I work with, and maybe you do too, that just haven't been able to embrace the holidays at all, or in very, very different ways, or feel very triggered by that. So I want to leave space for that too, because I do remember a time where I did not feel, like Santa's favorite helper. I was just getting through the season. So yeah, I think maybe it's important for people to know, like, it can change every year. And, you and I are living proof of like, we found ways that work for us, and anybody has permission to figure out what works for them.
Yeah. That's, I think, the really important part, because it's like, I've been out for so long now. Sometimes I don't even really stop and really think back to like, because it was a lot of like, I think, inner turmoil of just, because I mean, I always grew up this being my favorite holiday. And I think there was a part of me in hindsight that was sort of afraid of like losing that completely. And yeah, that probably impacted how I celebrated or didn't for a few years there. But it's definitely a thing where like now it's like I'm very happy with where I am and everything, and it's not something that I lose any sleep over, like, at all. So yeah, it definitely gets easier as time goes by.
I agree.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into these questions. So, yes. First one is finding new traditions when you no longer subscribe to Christian beliefs and holidays.
This is such a good question. And I know I said this a little bit on the last episode for one of the questions, but I think it applies here too. I really love the idea of expanding outside the Christian Christmas holiday. I think it's something like 26 holidays are celebrated in November and December, like kind of world holidays, not just even in the United States, which gives us so much to be able to draw from in terms of new traditions to start. I mean, I think it could be really awesome to pick a few different traditions and dive into it, learn about them, maybe attend different community gatherings. Maybe there's other friends or family that celebrate differently, and could you be a part of that? I think starting to learn about them, it would be the first step that I would say. That could go into Chat GPT, go onto Google or something, just start learning, look up social media stuff, look up in your community, are there things that could happen? Check to see, are there different recipes that you could create? Are there different things, activities that you could do? Maybe you have children or you have other family or friends that you could participate in this with. And I think so much of it is just being motivated to be creative and educate yourself on what that could be. And maybe even educate yourself on the history of Christian traditions to see wow, where did those come from? And are they co-opted from other places? Because hint, yes, they are. So yeah, that's kind of where I would go with first. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think everything you said, very much agree with that. I think that's a great idea, just being creative, leaning into that creativity and being open to just being flexible and making things your own. I would also even add, this piggybacks off of what you said about how much Christianity has co-opted. Really, it's when you actually get into a lot of the roots of a lot of the Christian traditions around Christmas and other holidays, it's they're not even inherently Christian. They took,
they're so many taken from pagan rituals, which I just love. I think that's so great.
And so actually, in some ways, it's depending on what you want to do, there's a lot of those traditions you probably could keep. Just take out baby Jesus and the Virgin Mary. But that's only if you want to. That's the other piece. I think it's just being flexible and allowing yourself to, you also don't have to wholesale get rid of everything that might have traces of Christianity in it. If there's aspects of Christianity or the traditions that were meaningful to you when you were in Christianity that you want to keep, that's fine. You don't you can keep things that are enjoyable or fun that you found meaning in, and it's fine if it has bits of Christianity still lingering around the edges. You don't have to necessarily throw it all out.
Yeah.
Now you certainly can, but that's up to you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think part of it too is just letting yourself be flexible even from year to year of what do I want to celebrate and what works for me? And I'm thinking back to, several years ago, what I felt like I had capacity to celebrate in terms of some of the normal Christian traditions that I had growing up. I didn't have capacity, but now I'm at a place where it's I do like to set up a Christmas tree. I like to listen to Christmas music. But it doesn't have the religious connection for me. So it works for me. But be willing to be open and change every single year if you want to. So along with that, I think too, we got a few of these questions that are kind of all in the same vein. And so it is how to find spiritual meaning at Christmas without church or without Advent. And also going along with that is how do I celebrate the holidays without this whitewashed slant on the Christmas story and traditions? So that's a really big question, but I think it's going with what that first question was talking about. What do you think, Andrew, if you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely my answer would still be a lot of what I said to the first one, I think. Finding meaning, I think being willing to be creative, be curious, not being afraid to just make it your own. It doesn't have to fit anybody else's box. That's the big piece. That's really where I would start with, because it can be challenging at first. Once you've left church or you're not celebrating Advent or other pieces, well, how do you still find spiritual meaning at Christmas? I think there's still ways that you can. There are themes of redemption and things I think are thematically are really spiritually meaningful stories, very meaningful narratives that I think absolutely, so it can absolutely still have an important place in your tradition or your family's traditions. But I guess, what are your thoughts on that, though?
Yeah. I totally agree. And I'm thinking about the part of the question that was about the whitewash slant on the Christmas story and traditions. And my encouragement would be, first of all, to educate yourself and to say, okay, so what are those things that are whitewashed and what is the actual origin? What are the actual traditions? Who celebrates them? Where are they celebrated? How did they even become what they are today? And giving yourself permission then to say like, okay, so if I want to celebrate in a more authentic way or more kind of like true to where the tradition started, then how do you want to do that? Like that's totally on you. Of how you want to do that and how you want to incorporate that on a personal level or with your family. And, maybe it doesn't mean that you go into your family Christmas and you give a sermon on all the wrong ways that they're celebrating, but maybe there's little things that you can do to try to incorporate different traditions, different education and history. And so maybe it's saying, like, hey, I'd love to read this poem, or I'd love to share this story of this tradition, and I'd like to do this activity, before we open gifts, before we sing, before we do whatever. Or maybe you don't celebrate, holidays like with your biological or family of origin, right? What could you do in your own life? Maybe it's with your own children, with your own family, with your own friends, to replicate what you're learning and to be able to replicate some of the traditions, while still, of course, honoring the culture with which they have come from, but being able to do it in your own home. So I would say it is entirely up to you to do some of that education and then start to decide what is important for you to bring into your current traditions. And also, what are the traditions that you no longer want to celebrate anymore? Maybe because it is the whitewashed version, because you don't believe in that sort of a savior figure anymore, whatever it might be. But yeah, you get to be the one to determine what that is and the meaning that you put behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. How do I use my voice and speak up for justice while also maintaining peace in my home?
Ah, yes. I feel like this one in particular, is very relevant this year. I mean, it is every year, but we're coming off of a very contentious election cycle in the United States. And so I think that this makes a lot of sense. And the place that I go first, and then I'm curious to know where you go with this, Andrew, is I don't know that there is one right way to do this. I think it's going to depend on who you are as a person. It's going to depend on your family. It's going to depend on conversations that you've had in the past. It's going to depend on a variety of factors. And so I think that you have to decide, what is it that I want to bring into this conversation? And I know we talked about this a little bit in the last episode of just, consider your audience. So are you with people where there is able to be discussion and conversation that's respectful and, has a curious edge to it and isn't about, degrading somebody else? Are these people that can handle that? And if the answer is no, I would say then maybe having conversations isn't the greatest thing, because whether it's over the holidays or any other time, they might not be people that would be particularly open to having those conversations. And so maybe it's that you just kind of show up in certain ways, or the way that you talk reflects your own values without having to make it a debate that they have to then get into that could turn into something very disruptive. That's kind of where I go with first. But what do you think, Andrew?
Mm-hmm. Certainly, there's lots of different contexts and different ways that different families show up. But definitely it's a thing where if it's not, depending on if it's not safe to speak up in certain ways, I also want to just acknowledge that. And if that's the case, I'm not going to sit here and expect you to find ways to speak up, because if it's not safe, it's not safe. And so, but I do think then what you said about there's still finding ways to live in alignment with your values, even without it having to be overtly a power struggle type of dynamic. I think that's something that can be done and has great value and is very helpful, but it just might look different. It may not be, in other words, it may not be, I don't know. It may not look like calling out your racist uncle at the dinner table, for example.
Right. Yeah.
But it may look like when you do have the chance to like in conversation or whatever, like share things that are important to you and that are more justice oriented, or like, or just think like that's more the angle that I would take, just sharing things that are in alignment with you rather than feeling like you necessarily have to be starting stuff or vocally holding boundaries with other people. It could be that, but again, it's also very valid that it may not be safe to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your circumstances are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about in the last episode of maybe having to set some boundaries, having some conversation topics that are maybe off the table, especially during the holidays. And that can be at other times as well. But I know where I've seen the most progress in conversations is when I've approached a person like one-on-one, and I've been able to approach with like an attitude of curiosity. So I might say something like, hey, I hear you saying that this is how you believe, or this is how you're going to vote. But I also hear that this other thing is important to you, like maybe this, biblical principle or something. And I'm not understanding how those two can go together. Can you help me understand how you rationalize those things, or how you make those two things fit together? That's just an example of something I've done before where it at least invites a person into their own awareness and curiosity and reflection, but it's not necessarily a debate. It's or I mean, it can go there, of course, but it's not starting off with that intention, that debate energy. But again, you want to know when the right time for that is. Is that over a family holiday dinner? Maybe, but probably maybe not. I don't know. It's going to depend on you and your family, but giving yourself permission to say that you can make sure that as you're standing up or speaking up for justice, that it's also in times where it could actually be heard and maybe responded to with curiosity coming back towards you.
Yeah. I'm always going to be in favor of leading with curiosity. I know you know that about me, but I agree very much so. Yeah.
Well, another question that we got is, how do we navigate discussions about God, Jesus, Christmas, etc., while co-parenting? And the person adds, one parent, me, is a former believer who is deconstructed, and the other parent is fully indoctrinated because they were raised as a pastor's kid. So how do we navigate those discussions? Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, that can be tough, especially if the other parent does not respect what you believe and thinks that actively undermining it is actually what God wants them to do. That being said, I think there still can be useful conversations where you are respecting their right to believe what they believe. That doesn't mean that you have to believe it. It doesn't mean that you have to not. It doesn't mean that you have to be silent about what you believe. But in the context of co-parenting, I think it's perfectly fine for both parents to be open about what they believe, and age appropriate ways, and then also hopefully being mutually respectful to one another, and then. The big thing here, especially again, co-parenting being the context we're talking about, is that showing up together, that letting your child know that you both are different and you both are showing up for them and love them. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I think that's what my emphasis would be on, is like, you're showing up for your kid. It's okay that you believe differently.
Yeah.
And you can still be respectful of each other. And I realize that might, depending on how the other parent shows up, that's not necessarily always within your control. I totally get that. But those are my initial thoughts anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very okay to be honest. And there's also a difference between saying like, hey, this belief or this particular doctrine does not make sense to me because of these reasons, or I find this to be harmful because of these reasons. Saying that versus anybody who believes in this thing is stupid. Right? Those are two very different ways of talking about things. And so I think that can be something that's helpful. Like, we're navigating these discussions, and, if I'm talking to my kids, I'm making sure to keep it like focused on what I believe or why I don't agree with these certain beliefs. And you're not belittling or disparaging the people that are believing them. I think that makes a huge difference. But then also, like what you were saying is like giving permission to be curious, to say, well, what do you think? How do you think this works for you? Like, what do you do with this? You know, you're asking me this question, but what do you think about it? Giving your kids the ability to start thinking critically is such a gift, because for so many of us who grew up in high control religions and were indoctrinated into different faith systems, we never had the opportunity to learn critical thinking. And we never had the opportunity to ask questions. So fostering a place where your kids know, like, they're going to be challenged to learn how to think on themselves for themselves, and that asking questions is okay. That's almost more of a gift that you can give them than just saying, don't believe that, believe this over here. That's just your fundamentalist thinking on the other side of the spectrum. So how can you create conversations that really amplify critical thinking, and being able to ask questions in a safe way? I think that is such a gift that you can give to people, especially your kids. All right, next question.
Let's see here. All right. Should you go to church on Christmas Day if it's hard for you but makes less drama with the family? Additionally, how do you answer your parents when they ask you why you aren't going to church anymore?
I have dealt with this personally. I have many clients who have dealt with this. Okay, let's start with the first part of that question. Should you go to church on Christmas Day if it's hard for you but makes less drama with the family? Of course, you know, I'm going to give like the very therapist answer, like, it depends. You know, like, I don't think that there's actually a correct answer here. I think sometimes for some people, it's like, yeah, if that is within your capacity to do that, and it feels like something you want to do because it is less drama, and you have less capacity to deal with drama than the capacity you have to maybe go to a service and tune things out, then there you go. That's your answer. But in other situations, it may not be. It may be much more important for you to say, like, I will deal with whatever the drama is because I need them to know, like, it is important for me to not go. And so I wish I had like a clear answer, but I think that there's a lot of things that you have to factor into it. And I'm going to go back to something that we talked about in the last episode too, is, you know, we're still, as this episode drops, we're still a week out from the Christian tradition of like Christmas, right? And their services, like Christmas Eve services, Christmas Day services. So what would it be like to decide for yourself, okay, here's what I want. And then can I communicate that ahead of time or set boundaries in such a way? So maybe the Christmas service is at 3:00 and you celebrate Christmas dinner at 6:00. Instead of going to the house at 2:00 and then going with everybody at 3:00 to the Christmas service, can you say, you know what? I will be at the house at 5:30 ready for Christmas dinner. Or maybe it's a conversation ahead of time where you're saying, hey, I just want to let you know I'm not going to be participating in this here. Here's these other things that I'm going to be participating in, but I wanted to give you a heads up so that on that day, you're not surprised. You might be okay if they're sad, right? Like, that's very different than surprised. It's okay if they're sad. They get to be, that's their own experience, right? But to say, I just want to let you know ahead of time, I'm not going to be participating in this. So even though I know that might feel sad now and on the day of, I don't want you to be surprised. So, I mean, I know we don't always have that luxury to do that, but if we can, sometimes doing that like preemptive work can be really helpful. But what would you say about that first part of it? And then maybe we can move on to the second part of the question of like, should you even go to church?
Yeah, if it's hard but makes less drama with the family. Well, I mean, like you said, it does depend, but I mean, I can appreciate on the one hand, like maybe, I mean, if it's, I mean, which is going to cause more distress for you and be more overwhelming. Like, yeah, it could be either, but also it's like, I mean, depending on what's going on with the family, I mean, it's also an option of, depending on how much distress this is bringing up, there's also the option of not going to church and not spending too much time with the family at all. I mean,
Yeah.
There's like also that other option. It's not like just, well, which one do you do? I mean, maybe neither. Now I realize, depending on family dynamics, like you can not do stuff with the family and it might still cause family drama that you have to deal with into the new year and so forth. That's a very valid reality for a lot of folks, I know. But I mean, it does depend. And it's just a matter of but you get to decide what you want that to look like.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. What would you say to that second question of like, how do you answer your parents when you say you're not going to church anymore?
Everyone's going to be so sick of hearing the phrase "it depends."
I know, but it's true.
But truly, it's a thing where how do you answer it? Well, depending on how you know your parents best, how much of a good faith question that is, whether you feel like they're even at all in a place where they can hear an honest answer and receive it well, or receive it at all. Then if let's start on that end. Like if they are in a place where you think they might be sad, but they'll actually hear me. They'll actually respect it. Then, I mean, honestly, how would you answer? I would actually just answer honestly. Now, how much information you give is up to you. You don't have to divulge your entire backstory of how it all started 5 years ago when I began deconstructing. You don't have to go there unless you just want to.
Yeah.
But it could be something as simple as, like for a variety of reasons, if it's like my values just don't align with the church's anymore, and therefore I'm not going. You get to say you get to decide where that hard stop is. Just because they maybe keep asking questions, and even if they are saying things like, "Well, I just want to understand," okay, that's fine. And I also am not obligated to continue divulging information and educating you about my entire backstory.
Yeah,
just because even if it's asked in good faith, like I'm not assuming that I want to understand is inherently manipulative. They maybe really do. They probably really do. But it can be short and sweet. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a memoir unless you want it to be.
Yeah. I think that's so important because there are some people that have parents that may not like it that you're not going to church, but would have the capacity to either have a conversation about it or to recognize that this is your choice and that's all that matters. And then there's going to be other parents that absolutely would not understand that and where the conversation will not be able to happen either now or ever. And so I think it really does depend. And then with that, you get to choose what you want to say. I'm always a fan of giving the headline version instead of the fine print, because there's a lot of people that might not deserve the fine print, that might not be able to handle, or you might have to give more energy than you can with the fine print. And so giving yourself permission to really evaluate, like, how have they handled hard stuff in the past? How have they responded to me? Are they open to these conversations? And if the answer is yes, and they've handled it well then maybe you can say, like, here's some more information. And if they haven't, I would make a much more succinct statement that doesn't invite further conversation.
I agree.
Yeah, try it that way. So yeah, it's a hard one. I do understand that. I think along those lines, but our last question for the day is, how do we navigate the overwhelmingly Christian holidays when you're no longer a Christian? And this kind of goes with, I think, so much of what we've been talking about, but maybe more specifics in terms of the stress and overwhelm that does happen as a result. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah. I mean, I think just giving yourself permission to not engage with things that you don't want to is one place I would start. So like, because I know there's so much nuance and even in that question, because I mean, it's easy to say that, but then also it's like, say that maybe the entire family still celebrates all these things, and maybe you still care about the family and get along with them and want to be a part of it. In which case, I would just be asking, and I would be curious about, well, how much does that drain bandwidth to be around that? And if that's the case, then just have some boundaries in place about how much you are around that, minimize how much you're around that, make sure you're checking in with yourself, giving yourself like exit strategies. So like, I'll show up to maybe like Christmas dinner, and then maybe they do like after Christmas dinner, there's like a Christmas Eve service at the church. And that's the hard stop. I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll just, I don't know, go on a walk or hang out at the house or go to Starbucks. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just like, I don't want to do that, but I do maybe still value time with the family, and that's okay. It's really, and then you can be creative. It can be whatever you need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's hard too, because so many of us came out of these religions, these high control religions, and it doesn't feel like there's actually a lot of space between that and like celebrating a specific holiday. Like in the United States, we celebrate Christmas, and that is connected to the Christian religion and faith traditions. And so it's like, oh gosh, I left this, but now, they're still celebrating it in the rest of culture. And so I just want to validate that overwhelm is real, and it can feel very hard to escape because it is all around us. It's in, it's on the radios, it's on the podcasts, it's on, in the malls and the stores and Target and like all these things. And it very much is up in our faces. And so sometimes it really does feel inescapable because it is everywhere. And if that's the case and it feels like too much, I would say, like, what are some ways that you can, what's the way I would want to put this? Like, insulate yourself so that some of those stressors are decreased. And so that might be like bumping up things like self-care and being really, particular on who you're spending time with and where you're spending time and how you're spending time. And then giving yourself permission to do even special things. Like maybe it's like, hey, I'm going to order my groceries for the month of December because I don't want to be in the grocery store surrounded by all of this stuff. So as a way to help myself, I'm going to have somebody else do that shopping, or I'm going to do a pickup grocery order. Maybe I'm going to do all my other shopping online or in online spaces so that I'm not having to go into stores. Maybe I schedule myself a 2-week-long vacation in some tropical island that I don't have to worry about any of that, or a cruise or whatever it needs to be. I would just say, like, if that's not something that you feel like you're equipped to handle this year or any year or every year, like, that's okay. You don't have to. I think that there's probably many people that do not celebrate the holidays for not even for religious reasons. Maybe they just don't want to. And it can feel weird because it's like, oh, this is what's culturally expected. But that's where I would invite you to say, like, just because there's an expectation does not necessarily mean that you have to follow it. It's a made up expectation. Like, it's not actually real. Like, it's put on us by other people who want it, and it helps them feel comfortable for you to do what they want, but it's not actually real. And so what are the ways that you can take care of yourself and change things so that it is something that is at least a little bit more tolerable for you? It may not be perfect, but a little bit more tolerable is a good goal to shoot for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So these have been some really great questions. I'm glad that people submitted them. It was so wonderful. I mean, I know we actually had many more questions, but we kind of just had to pick and choose which ones were, we were seeing themes over and over coming up and really pertaining to the holidays. But I love being able to do this. And maybe we should do this more often too, of just like a Q&A episode of, just things that people are asking, because there really is some like pretty intricate dynamics of religious trauma in the holidays. And I understand the need for extra support. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I like the idea of doing this more frequently because, holidays are, I think, big talking points where a lot of this stuff comes to a head. But really, these are, not even just around the holidays. I think anytime you're unpacking all the stuff of growing up in the church or family systems that are like this, there's any time of the year, I think there's a lot of stuff that comes up that it's useful to talk about. Yeah. Yeah. And so on that note, like we ended the last episode, if you do need any additional support, whether it's around holiday stuff, religious trauma stuff, or anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Center for Trauma Resolution and Recovery. We've got many practitioners who are taking on clients and who are offering free inquiry calls so that you can get to know them in a little bit about how they practice to make sure they're a good fit. So you can go to traumaresolutionandrecovery.com. There's a button right on the homepage that says start working with a practitioner today, and you can find a coach that fits for you. And even Andrew is one of our coaches, and he's taking clients too. So if you like the things that he's saying and want to connect with him more, please head over to our website, and I'll make sure that all of those that information is in the show notes for today. Andrew, anything else that you want to add in this episode?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm good. Just looking forward to, navigating all of this stuff with everybody.
Yeah,
so
Exactly. Me too. So I think with all of that, all God's people said, amen.
Amen.